The advance copies arrived on a Tuesday afternoon, stacked 4 to a carton, the cardboard damp from the long journey across the Atlantic. Elias Havel stood in the doorway of his London flat and watched the courier heave the boxes inside. Rain drummed on the awning. The courier's lips moved in what Elias assumed was small talk, but only the tremor in the man's jaw betrayed the sound. Elias nodded, signed, and shut the door. The silence that followed was the silence Elias trusted. Even when he rested his right hand on the humming radiator and felt the vibration of heat, it stirred no echo of sound. Nothing ever did. Deafness had been his companion since the meningitis at age 4. A companion as familiar as his own name, if not more trustworthy. All other senses, especially touch, filled the vacuum. He slit the first box with a penknife and lifted a copy of The Luminous Corridor, his third novel but the first under his own name. The matte jacket showed a charcoal tunnel leading toward a distant aperture of white light. An unsubtle image, perhaps. Yet for a story about the cruel mechanics of memory, it felt apt. He ran his fingers over the embossed title, letting the ridges guide him through the letters. THELUMINOUSCORRIDOR. Then he opened to the dedication, "For the child who lived and the adult who keeps him safe." His editor had objected to the line, saying it was vague, sentimental, even maudlin. Elias had insisted. On the page it looked as clean and ordinary as any other type, but he recalled how it had once sizzled beneath his thumb when he wrote it on the screen, as though revealing itself in fire. He assumed it was imagination. Now in the hush of his flat, he flicked through chapters and inhaled the scent of glue. Pride mingled with dread. The book's autobiographical layer was thinly disguised, but he believed no reader would trace it to his father's house in the Hungarian countryside, where Elias had first learned silence by necessity. He hoped so, at least. He slid the copy back into its box, and an odd impatience gripped him. A part of him wanted to read it all over again, line by line, though he knew the text by heart. Another part wanted to lock the boxes away and never open them. Instead, he brewed tea, sat by the window and watched dusk smudge the sky. When darkness came, he switched on a lamp, composed an email of gratitude to his agent, answered a few interview requests, then stretched, exhausted. Before bed, he performed the ritual he used before sending an early draft to his editor. He gripped the manuscript on both sides and flexed it sharply, as though cracking an egg, and whispered the only spoken words he ever permitted himself. "Be gentle." The single syllable of each word vibrated his chest cavity like thunder trapped in bone. Then he placed a copy of the printed novel, just one, on his desk in the study, closed the door, and went to sleep. He woke at 3:21 a.m. His left palm stung. Even before his eyes adjusted to the dark, he felt the scorch like the aftermath of grabbing a hot kettle handle, though no such kettle had been near. He sat up, heart racing. The bed sheets were cool. The air against his skin was cool. The pain localized at the center of his palm in a perfect oval. He stood, turned on the lamp, and examined the flesh. No mark at all. A notion as absurd as it was undeniable formed in him. He crossed the hallway to the study. Moonlight angled through the window onto the desk. The book lay where he had left it, closed, unremarkable, except its orientation had changed. It now showed the back cover instead of the front. He opened it to the dedication page. The line, "For the child and the adult," was gone. In its place was a single embossed dot the width of a coffee bean. Elias bent closer. Though sight told him it was flat ink, the pad of his finger insisted it bulged. Braille, he realized. But not the standard cell of 6 dots, just one, alone, as though announcing itself before speech. He dashed to the living room, retrieved another copy from a sealed carton, and compared. The second dedication page remained intact. Only the book on his desk had altered. A dream, he told himself, a half-lucid sleepwalk. Arithmetic ticked in his head. He had been unconscious, at home, alone. No one could have swapped pages, recollated prints, or pranked him. The boxes downstairs were sealed. The house was locked. Rest did not return that night. The next morning he typed a message to Malik, his editor, something odd with one author copy. "Will investigate." Regarding spelling on P83, I see your point. Maybe change to graphite? Let me know. He almost mentioned the Braille dot, then deleted the lines. Malfunctions happened. Better to find the cause before alarming the publishing house. He spent the day rereading old journals, each entry a footnote to the new novel. He tried to decide if he should postpone the launch to ensure no other copies were corrupted. Reason said no. How could a printing plant introduce a single raised dot without changing the paper stock? Stodd's intuition said yes, something had touched his story in the night and left heat. At dusk he brewed stronger tea, took 2 melatonin tablets and propped the afflicted book open on the desk to the first page of chapter 1. If it wanted to perform, let it perform. In the open, he left his phone camera aimed at it, set to record, and crawled into bed fully clothed. At 4:16 a.m. he bolted up, both palms blazing. The sensation was not pain so much as warning, 1,000 tiny alarms embedded under skin. He ran to the study, phone light bobbing. The book lay open where he had left it, but across the white space above the first paragraph stretched a river of Braille, the dots so raised they cast shadows. He touched them, and a flare seared through his fingertips, straight up his arms, into his skull. He jerked back. Heat radiated from the page. Remember how he licked the belt buckle clean before your Sunday suit? The dot said, marching under his fingers without consent. No voice spoke, no letters printed, yet meaning thundered in him. He doubled over, gagging. Susied memories thawed inside him. Age 7, press shirt, church shoes, the iron tang of brass against his tongue, his father's voice low and joking. Shine it for me, else God won't see his reflection. Elias had believed the act normal, a chore like polishing shoes. Only decades later had he sensed the humiliation stitched through it. Even then, the flashbulb of shame burned only briefly, quickly doused by layers of routine survival. Now the memory returned full color, as tactile as the Braille that summoned it. He backed away, closed the book, and wrapped it in a towel to smother its glow. Though the heat soon faded, he stopped the phone recording and replayed it. For hours the book had lain inert. At 4 o'clock exactly, pixels fizzed, the phone lost focus, and the screen filled with white static. 30 seconds later the image resumed, showing unmoving pages. The camera had captured nothing. 2 questions rose and wrestled. What does it want? How do I make it stop? Yet another question, less articulate, throbbed behind them like a subwoofer. Do I want it to stop? He spent daylight prowling second-hand stores for a Braille slate and stylus. He had never learned Braille. With modern screen readers and captioning, he read ink like any sighted person. But he bought the tools anyway, along with a primer. He also procured a pair of gardener's gloves with vulcanized fingertips. That night and the night after, he repeated the experiment. Each dawn, fresh Braille erupted, now not only across headers but inside paragraphs, pushing printed letters aside like ice flows. Words rearranged under his gaze. He filmed with 3 devices, mounted infrared sensors, sprinkled the desk with flour to catch prints. Nothing. Yet every morning his fingers hardened with calluses in the shape of dots, his nerves tuning to heat the way eyes adjust to light. The revelations intensified. His father tearing handwritten stories in half for wasting candle wax. The time he locked Elias in the root cellar when he signed instead of spoke. The night he beat Elias's mother until she miscarried twins. Elias had buried these scenes under vaults of silence, convinced that if he never spoke of them, they would evaporate. The book disagreed. On the 5th night, the Braille spread like ivy, consuming entire chapters, spilling onto margins, creeping down the foredge so that from afar the volume looked barnacled. Elias slipped on the gloves and traced a line on the left-hand page. He felt only a dull bump through rubber. He removed the right glove and touched a line. Your mother's last words were not a lullaby, but an apology she signed into your back while he pretended to hug you goodnight. The heat breached bone. Elias staggered. Tears, not of sorrow but molten recognition, scalded his eyes. All-day memories convulsed through him. By evening he resolved to answer the book. He sat at his desk, pulled a legal pad close, and with a Braille slate punched his reply, dot by dot, into thick paper. Stop. Tell me why. I know the past. What do you want? He slid the note under the book like an offering. Then he retreated to bed, headphones clamped despite silence, as if to anchor himself. At 2:13 a.m., the heat reached him even through the wall. He hurried in. The novel's pages ruffled, though no air moved. The braille on his note had transformed, the dots rearranged. Not what, but who. The child is still inside. He read further, the text unfurling across both papers as if dictated by an unseen stenographer. He still bleeds in the cellar. Let him out. Elias collapsed into the chair. Memory is not the past, he thought. Memory is the present disguised. He had written The Luminous Corridor to expose a fictional protagonist's abuse, so that Elias himself would never have to expose his own. He had planned to tour festivals, answer craft questions, sip wine amid polite applause. No reader, no critic, no friend had pressed him harder than he allowed. Each night the book proved less polite. He glanced at the wall of books above his desk. Pristine spines, first editions, his heroes, Calvino, Morrison, Borges, Ohe. He imagined them listening. He imagined them nodding, urging him toward what his own pages demanded. He placed the burning copy aside and opened a new Word document. Title: The Cellar Gospel. But when his fingers met the keyboard, letters refused to arrange. English felt ornamental, sluggish. He stared at the braille slate on the pad. The arrangement of raised dots was not a code, it was terrain. One did not describe terrain from afar, one walked it. He set the laptop aside, fed a fresh sheet between the slate's guides, and began. NPN for slogan, add it, on and off. SPNENRENE, dip PCMRE dot every. 1. Did he read back? He punctured the memory straight into paper, letting the stylus channel what ink could not. Before sunrise, he returned to the living room. The air tingled with ozone. Every copy of The Luminous Corridor, still sealed, had begun to sweat. Glue seeped at the gutters, curling the covers. He imagined the braille insurgency metastasizing through thousands of volumes across warehouses, bookstores, libraries. Would the world's readers feel what he felt? Or was the curse personal, aimed solely at him? Either answer frightened and thrilled him. He brewed coffee, sat among the mutating cartons, and considered his next move. Launch day arrived. The publisher's feed burst with congratulations, photos of bookstore windows, digital praise. Elias stayed indoors drafting an email. Subject: retraction. Body: pull all copies. Flaws beyond repair. Will refund advance. His finger hovered over send. He pictured stacks, pulped, shredded into slurry, silence restored. He closed the draft, unsent. Instead, he published a thread on his author's site. He told readers he was deaf, though most already knew. He told them he had written a book about trauma, then discovered the true story hiding beneath. He invited anyone who owned the Luminous Corridor to perform a simple test. After dark, in silence, place your hand upon any page and wait. If the book spoke to you, if heat rose, if braille burst, let it. Transcribe what you feel. Share it anonymously. Any language, any wound. He clicked post. Within hours, responses multiplied. A woman in Bristol felt warmth on the index finger she'd broken as a child. A teacher in Melbourne found dots forming over the word corridor until it became coffin, releasing memories of his sister's death. A war veteran in Lagos read braille that spelled, "We kept each other alive. Why pretend otherwise?" He wept and typed his first public confession. By midnight, the publisher's phone, Elias's email, forums, and social channels glowed with testimonies. The industry panicked. Was this a marketing stunt? A defective ink batch? Lawsuits loomed. But readers were unfazed by physical burns. Many seemed to crave them. Photos appeared of fingertips blistered in neat dotted patterns like constellations. Elias's editor arrived at the flat unannounced. Malik's eyes burned with sleepless fury. Yet, when Elias guided him to a copy and placed Malik's hand upon it, Malik flinched, removed his fingers, then returned them, ravenous. After a minute, he whispered, "It's my mother's handwriting. I smell jasmine." Tears welled. He looked at Elias, astonished rather than angry. Word spread. Some denounced the book as a cult, others called it a miracle. Within a week, prices skyrocketed on resale sites. Pirated PDFs circulated, but failed to manifest any heat. Only printed originals pulsed. The publisher, cornered between profit and liability, postponed further printings. Sold cartons were recalled, rendering the existing 12,000 copies relics each, already changing nightly inside its new owner's home. Elias declined interviews. Instead, he published the Seller Gospel online, free, plain text. Within lay no metaphors, no stylization, only unvarnished incidents, dates, and names. He wrote of his father's death by stroke 3 years prior, and how he had felt nothing but relief. He wrote of his mother's burial in an unmarked parish yard. He wrote of himself, at 8, smuggling a seed of silence into every nerve so sound could never hurt him again. Responses dwarfed the first wave. Survivors across continents posted their own gospels. The world's timeline became a scroll of Braille simulated in ASCII, forming hills and valleys of pain and rescue. No central index cataloged them, no government archived them. But they existed bright, burning dots against the night. Months passed, the book's edits decreased. The Braille grew fainter, the heat gentle, like cooling embers. One morning, Elias opened the original copy and found the pages blank. Not white, but a soft gray, as though ash had replaced paper. The cover crumbled when lifted. Inside lay a single brass belt buckle, immaculate, reflecting his face. He held it in his bare hands. It was cool to the touch. He wrapped the buckle in cloth and carried it to the Thames. Autumn wind brushed his cheeks. On the south bank he knelt, whispered no words, and dropped the buckle into the river. It vanished without splash. He walked home, fingertips tender but unburned. In the vestibule awaited a courier bearing 3 cartons, the second printing of The Luminous Corridor. The publisher, now branding it as The Book That Tells Your Truth, had agreed to emboss the entire run in dual ink and Braille. No fever, no fire, just language raised for anyone who wished to read with skin. Elias signed, tipped, and went upstairs. He slid a box and lifted a copy. The cover shimmered, the familiar tunnel etched in delicate bumps. He pressed his forefinger to the dedication. For the child who lived, and the adult who keeps him safe. No burn followed. On warmth, steady as a resting heartbeat. He closed the book, placed it on the shelf beside Calvino, Morrison, Borges, and O.E., then fetched paper and slate and began to write again, a story that would remain honest even in the dark.